Uh, excuse me, but can you see? I gathered the courage to ask the woman who regularly requested me as her driver. She gripped her white cane tightly and looked up at me. Our eyes met through the rearview mirror, and I knew. Yes. Her gaze was so direct and unwavering, I couldn't look away, as if drawn in. My name is David. I'm 26 years old. I work as a taxi driver. After graduating from college, I became a company employee, but I couldn't produce good sales results. On top of that, the constant need to win started feeling like a burden, so I quit. I stuck it out for 4 years at the company, pushing myself to the limit. Without thinking much about what came next, I left. I survived for a while on my modest savings, but being 26 and jobless wasn't sustainable. I guess I need to find a job. What kind of work should I do next? I bought a job magazine and muttered to myself while idly flipping through it at home. I didn't have any particular skills or certifications. I didn't even have a hobby I could proudly talk about. On my days off, I would go for drives. That was about it. As I was thinking about that, I stumbled upon a taxi driver job listing. A driver, Mumbling to myself, I got up from the bed where I'd been lying and pulled out the resume forms I had picked up along with the magazine. I decided I'd apply for the jobs that interested me and at least go to the interviews. I called the number listed in the ad, and they asked if I could come in for an interview the next day. I finished writing my resume, took an ID photo, and got everything ready. For the first time in 2 months, I put on the suit I used to wear every day. Even though it had only been 2 months, it felt like forever since I last wore it. I arrived at the taxi company 10 minutes before the scheduled interview time, walked in, and spoke to the woman at the front desk, who seemed to be a receptionist. Hello, my name is David. I'm here for the interview today. When I said that, the woman gestured for me to sit in a nearby chair and went to call someone. After waiting a few minutes, a man in a suit approached me. Hey, you must be David, right? He spoke to me in a cheerful tone. Feeling a bit nervous, I stood up and said, Yes. I'm David. It's a pleasure to meet you. I spoke with a serious tone, still showing a hint of tension. Oh, right. Please, have a seat. Do you have your resume with you? When he asked, I took the resume out of my bag and handed it to James, the manager. He seemed like a naturally cheerful guy, making sounds like and oh as he looked through the resume, never going completely silent. You quit a good company, huh? Seems like a waste. Why did you leave? His casual way of speaking made me relax, even though it didn't feel like a typical interview. I just got tired of competing with others or benefiting from someone else's mistakes. As soon as I said that, I felt like the interview was going downhill. I see. Corporate jobs can be tough. Honestly, work in general is tough these days. With a small sigh, James sounded like he truly understood. I just gave him a wry smile, unsure of how to respond. By the way, did you know you need a special license to be a taxi driver? A regular one won't cut it. Caught off guard, I probably showed my surprise on my face. You need a taxi driver's license. If you're planning to stick around long term, we can't cover the whole cost, but we do offer financial support. It usually takes about a month to get. So, what made you want to become a taxi driver? As I listened, I started mentally calculating the costs. Being jobless for another month and having to get a new license on top of that weighed on me. James stared at me, as if waiting for an answer. Oh, sorry. The reason I want to be a driver is that when I was a kid, our family went on a trip, and the driver told us all about the tourist spots. I thought that was amazing. I like talking to people, so I'd love to show off all the great places around my hometown too. My hometown was somewhat of a tourist destination itself. Since my sister and her husband lived with our parents, I had been living on my own since graduating from college. I see, yeah, the drivers who really know the area can tell you a lot. Not that I'd know, I'm not a driver myself, huh? James answered a question I hadn't even asked and then laughed at his own words. I realized then that he was truly a cheerful person. In the end, it was decided that I could work as a driver once I obtained my taxi driver's license. Thanks to James' arrangement, I could help around the office, wash cars, and do other small tasks while attending driving school. This way, I wouldn't completely drain my savings. During the day, I worked at the taxi company, and after clocking out, I went to driving school. Even after a month had passed, I still hadn't gotten my license. Since I was working during the day and only had limited time for driving lessons, it couldn't be helped. I was eager to finally start working as a taxi driver. One day, after finishing work and having no lessons that evening, I was leaving the company when I saw a woman collapsed on the side of the road. I quickly rushed over to the woman. "Are you okay?" I called out. I reached out my hand, but she didn't take it. She was a bit on the heavier side. Looking down, she brushed the dirt off her knees and turned toward me. It seemed like our eyes met, but she quickly turned away and picked up her glasses that had fallen. Noticing the white cane at her feet, I realized she couldn't see. I picked up the cane and tried to place it in her hand, but she let out a small, "Ah. Sorry, I didn't mean to grab your hand like that. I picked up your cane and was just trying to give it to you." Touching the hand of a woman around my age without permission was definitely an awkward move. Though it was a spur-of-the-moment reaction, I felt bad afterward, so this time I spoke more clearly. I'm holding your cane. Is it okay if I hand it to you?" When I said that, she nodded slightly. I then handed the cane to her. "Thank you." That was all she said before she slowly walked away without looking back. The next day, when I went to work, I realized my name badge, which I always kept in my bag, was missing. So I emptied the contents and searched carefully, but it was nowhere to be found. In the men's locker room, seeing me scatter my belongings, James asked, "Hey, what's going on? Did you lose something?" When he asked, I answered clearly, "My name badge is missing. I might have dropped it somewhere." As I was about to check my bag one more time, even though I had already searched it thoroughly, James spoke up. "No worries, just ask the office staff to make you a new one." "Okay," I replied, a bit downhearted. The office staff grumbled as I asked for a new badge, but they made one for me. Then I started my work. After a little over 2 months at the taxi company, I finally got my taxi driver's license. Now I could finally start working as a full-fledged taxi driver. I was excited to begin this new chapter. On my first day driving on the road, James arranged for me to only handle pickup requests. Waiting on the streets can be tough for beginners. For now, just focus on pickup requests to gradually get used to the job as a driver. Oh, and here, stick this somewhere visible in the car. With that, he handed me a name badge with my photo on it. Soon after, I got my first call. It was my very first customer. Since the area around the tourist spots was filled with restaurants and shopping centers, taxi requests were pretty common. "All right, David, take it easy. You're probably nervous since it's your first day, but just be polite with the customers." As he said that, James gave my shoulder a friendly push, encouraging me. Yes, I'm off. In preparation for this day, I had memorized the local roads, shortcuts, and backstreets for when traffic gets heavy. I also made a list of my recommended restaurants, writing them down in a notebook, ready to share with customers at any time. With that notebook and my new name badge in hand, I confidently got into the car. On the first day, the constant nerves and mental fatigue made me feel completely exhausted. However, as the days went by, I stopped feeling so nervous and gradually got more comfortable with my job as a driver. About 2 months later, while driving around the city, I received a call over the radio. "Hey David, there's a pickup request, and you're the closest. Can you take it?" It was perfect timing, as I had just dropped off a passenger. "Yes, I can. I'll head there now." Usually, James would hang up after that, but today he added something. "Oh, and by the way, the customer is visually impaired, so just keep that in mind." This was different from what I was used to, and I felt a bit of nervousness creep in. When I arrived at the designated location, I got out of the car and rang the doorbell. A young-sounding voice answered, "Hello? Thank you for your request. This is your taxi for pickup." As I said that, a voice came through the intercom. "Thank you. I'll be out in a moment." After she said that and hung up the intercom, a few minutes later, I heard the sound of the front door unlocking. The door opened, and the woman came out alone, holding a white cane. I found it a bit odd that she opened the door so readily, just trusting the word taxi through the intercom, especially since she lived alone. It seemed a little unsafe. Still, she didn't appear suspicious or concerned. "Please," she said. She then extended her white cane. "All right, it's this way," I said, pointing toward the car, but then I realized she couldn't see my gesture. Catching myself, I asked her, "Please place your hand on my shoulder or arm. I'll guide you." She hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand on my arm, holding her cane in the other hand, and followed me. I opened the car door, and after making sure she was seated, I spoke to her. "I'll close the door now." With that, I gently closed the door. I got into the driver's seat and asked her where she was headed. She replied that she was going to a shopping mall in the neighboring city, so I said understood and stepped on the accelerator, heading toward our destination. Every customer is different, some like to chat, others prefer silence, some work during the ride, and others make phone calls. I usually figure out if someone wants to talk after exchanging the first few words. But with her, I couldn't start a conversation based on things I could see, like the scenery or the crowds. I wasn't sure how to approach this. I decided to stay quiet and focus on driving. Then, she spoke up. "Have you been a taxi driver for long?" Her sudden question caught me off guard, and I glanced at her through the rearview mirror as I answered. "No, I just started this job 2 months ago. Please let me know if there's anything uncomfortable," I answered politely. While paying close attention to my driving, I made sure to drive as safely as possible. Was there something about the ride that felt off? I started to feel a little concerned. "No, it's fine. You seem to be driving safely, and I have no complaints about the ride." Hearing that, I felt a sense of relief. Could it be that she wanted someone to talk to? Thinking that might be the case, I decided to start a conversation. I used to be a company employee, a sales rep actually. But competing with others and stepping on people to get ahead started to wear me down. So I quit my job and became a taxi driver, wanting to try something completely different. I didn't expect her to be interested in my story, but I figured it could be a good way to break the ice. "I see. I guess being a salesperson must be tough with all the quotas, right? I work from home since, well, as you can see. We continued chatting about the kinds of jobs we'd been interested in or what we would have liked to try, and before I knew it, we had arrived at her destination. We've arrived. Thank you for using our service. I told her the fare and received the taxi voucher from her. As she was about to step out of the car, she asked, "May I ask your name?" I was a bit taken aback. In the 2 months I had been doing this job, no one had ever asked for my name before, so I was a little nervous. What if I made a mistake and she reports it to the company? With those thoughts running through my mind, I anxiously told her my name. "My name is David." She smiled and said, "Thank you," before stepping out of the taxi. When I went to work the next day, nothing was mentioned. I had been worried all day, wondering if she had filed a complaint about me after asking for my name the day before. I felt a bit ashamed of how easily rattled I was, but also relieved that she hadn't filed any complaints. A week passed after that, and I continued my usual work. Then I received a message over the radio, a pickup request with me specifically requested. "David, you've been requested. The client is Yvonne. Please make sure to be courteous. Oh, and by the way, she's visually impaired." Hearing this from James, I immediately remembered the woman I had driven the previous week on the same day. Understood. I'm heading there now. I found it surprising that a taxi driver could be requested, but I made my way to her house. When I arrived, I got out of the car, just as I had done before, and rang the intercom to let her know I had arrived. "Your taxi is here." I called through the intercom, and soon after, she came out. "Thank you for using our service, Yvonne," I said as I extended my arm for her to hold onto. "Thank you," Yvonne said as she placed her hand on my arm, almost as if she had seen me extend it. "All right, let's head to the car." I didn't feel anything unusual about the gesture and simply followed the same routine as before. That's all I thought of it. Once we got into the car, Yvonne gave me a different destination than the one from last week. Understood. I confirmed the location and started the car. "Thank you for requesting me. Are you meeting someone today?" I asked without thinking. "Huh? No, I'm not, but why do you ask?" Surprised by my question, she responded with a question of her own. "Oh, sorry, it's just that you look so nice today. I thought it might be a date." Is it inappropriate to ask something like that these days? I said, worried about compliance. "Oh, are you talking about harassment?" "Oh, don't worry, I didn't take it that way." I immediately apologized, feeling a bit panicked. "Harassment? Yes, you're right. I shouldn't have commented on your outfit. I'm really sorry." Feeling flustered, I quickly apologized to Yvonne. "It's fine. I didn't think anything of it. Since I work from home, sometimes I like to go out just to refresh myself. I've made Wednesdays my day to pamper myself, so I like to dress up and go out," Yvonne explained. As she said this, I glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Our eyes seemed to meet, and sensing my thoughts, she continued. "You're probably wondering how I can do that when I can't see, right?" It felt like she had seen straight through my thoughts, and I became flustered, quickly trying to deny it. "No, that's not it." But I couldn't find the right words, and ended up mumbling awkwardly. "I have a helper come over once a week. They help me by hanging clothes on the rack, each labeled in Braille. That's how I can tell them apart. Makeup, however, is a bit beyond me." As she spoke, Yvonne lowered her head slightly, I see. It must be tough emotionally, just working from home all the time. What kind of work do you do? When I asked that, she made a typing motion with her hands. I do transcription work on the computer. We continued having this casual conversation. Over time, after receiving several pickup requests from her, I found that my perception of our relationship shifted slightly. From merely driver and customer to something more like familiar acquaintances. Because of that, I sometimes accidentally started talking about the scenery we were passing while driving. Yet, Yvonne always responded as if she could see exactly what I was describing. It happened a few times where I'd forget that she couldn't see until after I dropped her off. And that feeling of something being off would hit me afterward. One day, after this had happened several times, something similar occurred again. That day, I received another pickup request for Yvonne and had her in the car. As I drove her to the destination she had specified, I noticed a new crepe shop had opened in the area. Excited by the sight of a long line of young people and families, I started talking. Wow, look at that! It's a new crepe shop, and even on a weekday, there's a huge crowd. I'd love to try it sometime. But maybe when the hype dies down a bit. Right after I said that, it hit me that Yvonne couldn't see the scene, and I considered correcting myself. But before I could, she spoke up. You're right. The crepe shop has such a long line. Yvonne said, with a look of surprise and admiration, as if she were gazing out at the scene through the window. I happened to catch her reaction in the rearview mirror, and the feeling of unease I had been experiencing solidified into certainty. If my suspicions were correct, I couldn't understand why Yvonne was pretending. Even though it had nothing to do with me, it bothered me enough that I gathered the courage to ask. Yvonne, can you actually see? I confronted her with my suspicion. Her face, which had been smiling just moments before, suddenly turned serious, and she lowered her head for a few seconds. Then, as if making up her mind, she looked up and answered my question. Yes. That was all she said. Why? I mean, it's none of my business, but why pretend that you can't see? Is there some reason behind it? Yvonne stayed silent in response to my question. If there was some reason for her act, it wasn't my place to pry further. I decided not to press her anymore. But this time, Yvonne spoke up. Could we just keep driving for a while? Her expression was serious. But what about your destination? Is it okay if we just drive? I almost mentioned the cost, but held my tongue. I'll pay for the extra time. Hearing that, I nodded without saying a word. I drove aimlessly with no destination in mind. Yvonne remained silent. The air in the car was tense and heavy, filled with an unsettling quiet. Just as I was thinking of bringing up a different topic, Yvonne spoke first. Earlier, you asked if there was a reason behind it, right? She said this, and I nodded slightly. I've always been on the chubby side, ever since I was a kid. Back then, it was fine. People would say I was cute, that I looked plump and adorable. But that's because I was a child. By the time I reached middle school, other girls started worrying about dieting and their figures. I tried to do the same, but my parents were always happy to see me eat, and they prepared delicious meals every night. I couldn't bring myself to tell them I was on a diet, so I kept eating. My friends were getting prettier, while I just kept getting bigger. Eventually, I became embarrassed by my body. Even when I walked with my thinner friends, if something happened, people would help them. But I'd be ignored. After experiencing that over and over, my confidence slowly faded. As she spoke, memories from the past seemed to flood her mind, and her eyes began to well up with tears. Then, one day, I saw a scene in a TV drama where someone, who was visually impaired and had a similar body type to mine, fell and was in trouble. In that moment, I thought that people would always help someone like that. I also thought it would be easier not to care about other people's stares anymore. I know it's wrong, but I started imitating that. Yvonne took out a handkerchief from her bag, wiped her tears, and then pulled something else out. Holding the object tightly in her hand, she began to speak, as if recalling a memory. "Do you remember this name badge?" She held it up, showing it to me through the rearview mirror. "Wait, isn't that my old name badge? How do you have it?" Looking apologetic, Yvonne started to explain. "This fell when you helped me in front of your company a while back. I kept meaning to return it but never could, so I've held on to it all this time. I'm really sorry." I tilted my head, trying to recall the moment she was talking about. "Did I help you, Yvonne?" When was that?" I asked her, clearly unsure and unable to recall the moment. "It was about 2 months ago. You ran over to help me when I had fallen." Little by little, the memory started coming back to me, and I said, "Oh," letting her know that I had remembered. "Oh, right. I think it was on my way back from a job interview." Yvonne stared at the name badge, smiling softly as she recalled the event. At that moment, I thought, people really are kind to those who seem vulnerable. But when I saw the seriousness in your face, I felt ashamed for pretending. "Since you came out of a taxi company, I figured you were a driver. And I always wanted to tell you the truth and apologize. But the time we spent together, with you thinking I couldn't see, felt so enjoyable. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. I'm really sorry." She bowed her head and kept whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. "Well," I mumbled before I could even think of a proper response. Yvonne seemed to misunderstand my hesitation and apologized even more. "Oh no, it's not that I'm upset. I actually kind of understand where you're coming from. I mean, everyone has moments where they feel it would be easier not to worry about other people's gazes. Even I struggled with feeling the pressure of competing with others or needing to be better than someone else. It made me feel awful. But pretending to be blind, well, maybe now's the time to stop and start believing in yourself. I thought I had to be a company worker after graduating, but honestly, I love being a taxi driver now. So I hope you can find something like that for yourself too." As I finished speaking, we arrived at our original destination. Yvonne put her white cane back into her bag and stepped out of the car on her own. "Thank you. I feel so much better after talking about my feelings. I think it's time for me to re-evaluate myself." Her face was now full of smiles. The next week, there was no pickup request from Yvonne. For a while now, she had been requesting me regularly for pickups. It must be because I figured out her secret. She probably doesn't want to ride with me anymore. What had become a regular part of my week now felt strangely empty. The following week passed with no request from her either, and I started to accept that I might never see her again. Though I was feeling down about it, I continued my usual taxi duties. 6 months later, just as she was becoming a distant memory, I received a pickup request over the radio from James. "David, we've got a pickup request. It's from Yvonne. Take good care of her." As James gave me her address, my heart pounded loudly. "Understood." I kept my composure as I responded over the radio. "Yvonne, it's really her, right?" I couldn't believe she had requested me after 6 months. What could this be about? I found Yvonne's actions puzzling. Following the familiar route as instructed, I headed toward her house. When I arrived, I pressed the intercom as usual. "Hello?" A bright, energetic voice answered. "This is your taxi for pickup." I responded as usual. "I'll be right out," she said, and then the intercom went silent. After waiting a minute or two, the front door opened with a soft click, and a woman stepped out. There was no white cane in sight. "Thank you." The woman who responded wasn't the Yvonne I once knew. Her slender legs, her long, fair hands. Her flowing hair shimmered with a glossy shine. And her face, Yvonne's face, radiated confidence, beaming a bright, glowing smile at me. "Yvonne, is that you?" I asked, my heart racing as I looked at the woman before me, so different from how she appeared 6 months ago. "Yes, it's me, Yvonne." Since then, I've apologized to all the people I deceived and told them the truth. Instead of hiding myself, I've spent the last 6 months learning to stand tall and be confident in who I am. I've also been dieting, and now that I feel lighter, both physically and emotionally, I enjoy dressing up, and I even appreciate the way people look at me. As she spoke, Yvonne smiled brightly, happily sharing her story with me. "Shall we go?" With that, Yvonne quickly made her way toward the car. Still trying to process everything, I jogged to catch up and followed her to the car. Once inside, Yvonne gave me her destination. "I'd like to go to that crepe shop." The popular crepe shop that had opened in the area for the first time. Even after 6 months, the long lines still hadn't faded. Understood. After telling her that, I started the car. Even after getting in, Yvonne's face remained cheerful. As we approached the crepe shop, her smiling face turned serious, and she took something out of her bag before speaking. "David, I'd like to return this name badge," she said, handing me the badge she had picked up for me a long time ago. I took my hand off the steering wheel briefly to accept it. "Thank you," I said. Then, she began to speak. "When you found out I was lying 6 months ago, it felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I couldn't keep up the charade forever. And deep down, I wanted someone to call me out on it. Maybe that's why I never felt right about it. When you told me I could find something meaningful to pursue, I realized what that something was. It was becoming confident in myself. Confessing my feelings to you, and going to the crepe shop together. That became my goal." Her sudden confession left me speechless, and I was caught off guard by the word confess. "Confession?" Yvonne blushed, looking straight at me through the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with sincerity. "Ever since you helped me the first time, I've been interested in you. If you'd like, would you join me for crepes?" Her gaze was direct and serious as she made the request. "Wait, what? No way." I was so surprised by her words that, while focusing on driving, I hurriedly pulled the car over to the side of the road. What should I do?" "I can't," I blurted out in my confusion. Yvonne's face turned sad as she responded. "I figured as much." Seeing her look down, I waved my hand quickly, trying to correct the misunderstanding. No, that's not what I meant. I just can't right now because I'm working, but I'm off the day after tomorrow." "How about we go then? And, should we exchange contact information?" I turned around and pulled out my phone, looking at her as I spoke. "Yes, absolutely," Yvonne said as she pulled out her phone. Sometimes, all it takes is a spark to start something new. And those feelings will always reach someone. We exchanged contact information and made plans for the day after tomorrow. I had a feeling that something was beginning, and my heart was racing with an exciting, pleasant anticipation. This is sudden, but you're fired. Mr. Smith suddenly dropped that bombshell. What? I couldn't help but blurt out an awkward response. But anyone would react like that if they were suddenly told they were being fired without any warning. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I think it's best for you to leave. Mr. Smith continued. I was shocked and couldn't help but raise my voice. Mr. Smith. Firing me out of nowhere. I can't accept this. I've worked hard for the company since the day I joined. Sure, I've made my share of mistakes, but I don't recall doing anything that would warrant getting fired. Please, tell me what I did wrong. Mr. Smith looked at me, stunned by my outburst, before giving me a calm reply. All right. Let me explain. Just then, I heard the sound of a door, which had been closed, open with a click. I turned around to see a familiar face standing there. I've been waiting. Thank you for yesterday. The man who smiled at me was the elderly gentleman whose luggage I had rushed to deliver at the airport yesterday. I'm Michael. I work for a processed food company called Smith Foods as a 40-year-old employee. At this age, many people are in managerial positions, but I'm still a regular employee. In my personal life, I'm single and currently without a girlfriend. My boss, Greg, is a year older than me and holds the position of assistant manager. In addition, he's married. Because of that, he often looks down on me, which can be pretty annoying. Greg, could you take a look at this document? The other day, I overheard my junior colleague, Tom, talking to Greg. Oh, no, I can't. I've got a meeting to attend. Have Michael over by the window check it for you. He's single, has no girlfriend, and hasn't been promoted yet, so he should be able to handle something this simple. I overheard Greg's response. He always throws little digs like that at me. I've gotten used to it after hearing it every day, but it never feels good. Tom, my junior, seemed at a loss for how to react, so he simply said, "Got it. I'll have Michael check it," and brushed off the rude comment. He is a sharp guy who knows how to avoid unnecessary trouble, and that's how I saw him. He then came over to me and said, "Sorry, Michael. Greg told me to ask you to check this document." All right. As I was checking the materials for the business meeting, he said, "Greg's something else, huh? He always looks down on people and calls them incompetent, but isn't he the most incompetent one here?" I mentally took back what I had thought earlier. I had assumed Tom was the kind of guy who steered clear of trouble, but here he was bad-mouthing the boss. It also made me realize just how problematic Greg really was. Even someone as usually cool-headed as Tom was fed up with him, and that says a lot. I've known him for a long time, so I'm used to it by now, but yeah, it doesn't feel good. That said, Greg did praise you as a capable subordinate. So don't worry. I tried to reassure Tom. But he responded, "Being praised by him doesn't make me happy at all. If he likes you, you just end up having to listen to him badmouth other employees. No thanks. I can't wait to move to a different department." I was left speechless by my junior's sharp words. Then, the next day came. Tom and I were called by our manager, Ted. He told us, "I need you both to go on a business trip starting next week. There's an important meeting with Mr. Brown from our client in Kansai region." Last-minute business trips were nothing new, so we responded without hesitation, "Understood. Just to confirm, it'll be the two of us going on the trip, correct?" Tom asked. Ted replied, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention Greg is going with you, too. The three of you will be going together." I could see Tom's face became disappointed. "Is it because you don't trust just the two of us to handle it?" Tom asked Ted. I could tell how much he didn't want to go with Greg. "Ha ha. It's not that the two of you aren't reliable." But this time, Greg insisted on going. He said he wanted to meet Mr. Brown in person rather than leaving everything to his subordinates. Since we're not too busy right now, I figured it wouldn't hurt to let him tag along. Honestly, if Greg's going, I thought maybe you and Tom could handle it without me sending you along. Michael. Before Ted could even finish, Tom jumped in, almost panicking. "No. Absolutely not. Michael has to come with us." It was clear how much Tom didn't want to go alone with Greg. In the end, we agreed to all three go, and on Monday, instead of heading to the office, we met directly at Haneda Airport and boarded the plane to Kansai region together. Our client was located near the Kansai airport, so we planned to take a taxi. As we were about to get in, Greg said, "All right, I'm heading to downtown for some good food. You guys handle the meeting. Call me when you're done." Tom stood there, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. As his senior, I knew I had to say something, so I spoke up to Greg. "Greg, if you're just leaving the meeting to us, there's no point in you coming with us. This is an important meeting. You should be there." Greg scoffed. "What? You're giving orders to your boss now? That's disrespectful. Besides, there was never a need for all three of us to go. You and Tom can handle it. Just give me the report later." Without waiting for our response, he turned and walked off. Can't believe. Seeing such unprofessional behavior from our boss made me feel terrible for Tom, who always worked so hard. I also regretted my own inability to stop Greg. "Sorry, Tom. I couldn't stop him." But he quickly replied, No, you don't need to apologize. That's 100% on Greg." What was that? He volunteered for this trip just so he could slack off and eat his way through Kansai. Let's just forget about him and handle the meeting ourselves. Tom was clearly frustrated but determined as he looked at my phone, realizing I was about to call Greg back. He shook his head. "All right. We'll let it be. Let's just nail this meeting ourselves." We went to our client's office, successfully concluded the meeting, and secured the contract. After we left, I checked my phone and saw I had a missed call from Greg. Reluctantly, I called him back. "Hey, did the meeting go smoothly? I just had some amazing food in downtown. Let's meet at the airport at 4. See ya." He hung up without waiting for a reply. His voice was so loud that even Tom overheard the entire conversation. Tom was in shock again. Forget him. Let's head back ourselves and report this to Ted. We should tell him how Greg dumped the meeting on us and just went on a food tour. He looked serious, but I replied, "It's not that simple." I immediately regretted my words. Was I being the voice of reason, or just a worn-down employee who had lost his way? Then 4 p.m. rolled around. It was time to meet Greg. Tom and I were waiting at the souvenir shop where Greg had said we should meet. Greg's the one who said 4 p.m., and he's still not here. "Let's just go," Tom said, clearly fed up. I was starting to think he was right. Greg's selfishness was getting harder to tolerate. At that moment, an elderly man slowly approached us. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I board the flight to Tokyo?" An elderly gentleman slowly walked toward us, asking for help. "Tokyo. You mean the flight to Haneda Airport, right? It's from the second floor. Do you know what time your flight leaves? Do you have your boarding pass with you?" The elderly man, who seemed well over 70, walked slowly and was carrying a large bag by himself. Tom and I glanced at his boarding pass. "Ah, the 5:30 flight. That's the same one we're on," Tom said. "Yeah, it is," I confirmed. That made things easier. We quickly checked our gate and let the elderly man know. "Thank you, you've been a great help," he said with a smile, bowing slightly before trudging off with his large bag. "Hey, this black bag wasn't there earlier, right?" I looked down and noticed a small black shoulder bag on the floor. That might be the old man's. "He must have forgotten it," I said. "But he left carrying a big bag, didn't he?" Tom replied. I remembered clearly. The elderly man had been holding a smaller shoulder bag along with the big one. He probably planned to check the larger bag and carry the smaller one onto the plane. Oh, his wallet's probably in here. Tom unzipped the bag slightly to check inside and said, "We should probably take a quick look." Before I could think twice, I grabbed the elderly man's forgotten bag and immediately started running in the direction he had gone. "Michael!" I heard Tom call out, and I glanced back, giving him a quick nod before turning and running again. The old man hadn't walked far, his pace was slow, so he couldn't have gotten too far yet. I figured he might stop by the luggage drop-off counter before heading to the gate. I scanned the area as I jogged, trying to spot him. When I reached the luggage counter, he wasn't there. Had he already gone to the boarding gate? Since he was on the same flight as us, maybe I could hand the bag to a flight attendant and they could get it to him. But what if his passport was in the bag? A whirlwind of thoughts ran through my mind. But I was more focused on finding him as quickly as possible than stopping to check the contents of the bag. Then, I spotted him in the distance. There he was, at the cashier of a shop, holding his large suitcase. Found him. Thanks to my good eyesight, I could recognize the old man from afar. I was sure it was him, so I sprinted toward the shop. "Excuse me, sir. You forgot your bag," I shouted at the top of my lungs. Both the old man and the cashier turned to look at me at the same time. Oh my. That's my bag. The one with my wallet in it. Thank you so much. The old man's eyes widened as he stared at the bag, then he looked at me, his eyes welling up with gratitude. "I can't believe you ran all this way. You must be out of breath," he said, his voice trembling. "Sir, I'm so glad we found your bag," the cashier added. It seemed the old man had realized at the cashier that his bag with the wallet was missing and had started to panic. The cashier must have been concerned as well. "Thank goodness. I'm just glad I found you and got this back to you," I said, panting heavily from my sprint. "You mean I dropped it where we spoke earlier? You came all the way from there to here. I can't thank you enough," he said, squinting his eyes kindly at me. At that moment, I heard Tom's voice calling out, "Michael! There you are. Glad I found you." "I tried calling you, but you didn't pick up," Tom said. I looked at my phone, realizing I had several missed calls from Tom. "Sorry about that. I was so focused on running, I didn't even notice," I replied. "Looks like you found him." "I'm glad the bag made it back safely," Tom said. Suddenly, we heard a different voice behind us. "Hey, what the hell are you two doing over here? This isn't a joke." It was Greg. His tone was angry, almost aggressive. "Sorry, I was just trying to return a bag that this gentleman's forgotten," I explained. Greg scoffed. "Huh? You made me wait just to return a bag to some random old guy? It's his fault for forgetting it. Why bother? But the wallet was in this bag, so we thought it was urgent to return it." Tom tried to explain. Greg sneered. "Wallet? If we found it, then we'd be the lucky ones. Heck, we could have used the cash inside. If someone loses their stuff, that's their problem." The cashier and I both cringed at Greg's words, and the air around us grew awkward. But the old man remained calm and said, "I see. I'm sorry for troubling you all while you were working. It's true that I was the one who dropped it, so it's my responsibility. If the bag hadn't been returned, it would have been my own fault. I'm just lucky that it was returned to me thanks to your kindness." "I'm very grateful," he said, shaking my hands firmly and then bowing to both Tom and Greg. The old man then opened his wallet and pulled out 3 $100 bills, handing one to each of us. "This is a small token of my appreciation. Please accept it." Tom and I were stunned. "Wait. No, no, no. We can't accept this. We only chased after you because we noticed you'd forgotten your bag." I stammered, trying to give the money back. "Please, take it. I feel bad that you had to run so much for my sake," the old man insisted. "No, really, it's no big deal. I used to be in the track and field team back in school. Running like that is nothing for me," I said, trying to be humble. But Greg just said, "Why are you guys hesitating? Come on. He wants to give it to us, so let's just take the money." Tom gave Greg a look of disbelief, as if to say, "You didn't do anything, did you?" Knowing Tom, I was nervous he might actually blurt that out. "Well, just take it," the old man said kindly. Then Greg chimed in, "Michael. Tom. If you guys won't take it, I'll just keep all $300 for myself." Panicking, Tom and I quickly stuffed the $100 bills into our wallets. I'll never forget the look of exasperation on Tom's face. The old man gave us a final bow and headed off to the boarding gate. Afterwards, Tom and I grabbed a quick bite before heading to the gate and boarding the plane. We didn't see the old man again, as his seat was far from ours. When we landed at Haneda Airport and wrapped up the business trip, we didn't stop by the office but instead contacted Ted and went straight home. The next day, as usual, I arrived at work and started writing the trip report and filling out my expense claims. Then, to my surprise, Mr. Smith walked into our department's office. "Michael, I need a word with you," he said abruptly, making me panic a little. Yes, sir." I stammered a reply and followed Mr. Smith as he led me to his office. "Excuse me." I bowed slightly as I entered, and Mr. Smith said, "Have a seat," so I sat down as instructed. I had no idea what this was about, but then he said, out of nowhere, "It's been decided, you're fired." "What?" I couldn't help but respond rudely in my shock. But who wouldn't react that way when suddenly told they were being let go for no apparent reason? "I've been thinking about it for a while, and in the end, I believe it's best that you leave," he said, almost piling on the pressure. Unable to hold back, I raised my voice. "Mr. Smith, you can't just fire me like this. I've worked hard for this company ever since I joined. Sure, I may have made mistakes, but I've never done anything that would get me fired. Please, tell me what I did wrong." Mr. Smith looked momentarily stunned by my outburst, then calmly responded, all right. Let me explain." Just then, the door to the office, which had been closed, clicked open. I turned around to see a familiar face. "I've been waiting for you." "Thank you for yesterday," smiled the elderly man I had chased after at the airport to return his bag the day before. Before I could say more, the old man spoke again. "You really helped me yesterday. I've become forgetful in my old age, and losing my wallet could have been a disaster, my ID, credit cards. All of it could have been misused. I'm so grateful you ran after me to return it." "Oh, it was nothing, but," I began, then continued. "What does this have to do with me getting fired?" "Mr. Smith?" I asked, turning back to Mr. Smith. He then explained what had happened 30 minutes earlier. Before I was called into the office, another person had visited this room. That person was Greg. Mr. Smith had called Greg in earlier that morning and had a conversation with him in the office before speaking to me. He told me that during their discussion, he said this to Greg. "Greg, today will be your last day. You're being let go." So it wasn't me who was being fired, it was Greg. "What? What are you talking about, Mr. Smith? I'm the assistant manager. You can't fire me, can you?" That's what Greg had said, apparently. "Don't worry. No one will miss you when you're gone. In fact, the company will run better without you. So, please, feel free to resign," Mr. Smith had replied. And right at that moment, when I entered the office, Greg said this. The elderly man, Mr. George Smith, took over from Mr. Smith and continued recounting the events from 30 minutes earlier. When I arrived here, Greg was startled and said, "What's the old man from the airport doing here?" That's when Mr. Smith replied, "Still as rude as ever, huh? This man is my father." Greg's face turned pale instantly. I was shocked to hear this. "You're Mr. Smith's father?" I had no idea. "I'm terribly sorry for any disrespect." I quickly bowed deeply to George. But George smiled kindly and said, No, you've done nothing wrong. In fact, I should be the one thanking you. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. My name is George Smith, father of Mr. David Smith here, the CEO. I live in Kansai region. But I came to Tokyo yesterday to visit my son. Usually, I take the train, but I thought I'd fly for a change. So I took a plane from Kansai Airport for the first time. In the rush, I forgot my bag and ended up troubling you. George paused, reflecting on the conversation between Greg and Mr. Smith earlier. So, when Greg said those rude things to me, my son, David, responded, I heard everything from my father about yesterday. Not only did you call him an old man at the airport, but you also complained to Michael, who went out of his way to return the forgotten bag. And this morning, I spoke to Tom, who told me that during yesterday's business trip, you left the negotiation to Michael and Tom while you went on a personal food tour. You took a company-paid trip and ditched work for sightseeing. You, of all people, should know how unacceptable that is. Your travel expense claim from this morning is invalid, but more importantly, I've been considering disciplinary action for some time now due to your poor attitude and lack of responsibility. This incident is the final straw. You're fired. Pack up your things and leave. Just as George finished speaking, a shadow appeared at the office door. It was Greg, the man in question. Shh. What are you doing in the CEO's office, Michael? I didn't even want to see your face. Greg, no longer the assistant manager, sneered as soon as he saw me. Greg, have you finished packing? You're here to return your employee ID, right? Let's get it over with, Mr. Smith said firmly. Greg marched over to Mr. Smith's desk, scowling, and handed over his ID with a sour expression. At that moment, another figure appeared at the door. It was Tom. Excuse me. I heard Greg was here, so I came to say my goodbyes. Thank you for everything, Tom said in a flat, matter-of-fact tone. What the hell, Tom? Was it you who ratted me out to Mr. Smith? Thanks to you, I've lost my job. You owe me a month's pay for getting me fired, Greg shouted at Tom. I instinctively stepped in to protect Tom, saying, You're wrong, Greg. It wasn't Tom who reported it to Mr. Smith, it was me. I took the blame willingly. But then Tom spoke up, Thank you, Michael, for trying to protect me. But it's okay. I didn't do anything wrong. Letting someone like him continue unchecked wouldn't help anyone. Tom's voice was firm. Enough, Greg, Mr. Smith said, exasperated. This isn't about who reported it. You violated company policy. And it was any employee's duty to report what they saw. That's all there is to it. At that moment, George, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. I've lived longer than all of you, and I've seen many kinds of people. In moments of urgency, a person's true nature is revealed. Yesterday, at the airport, Michael ran without hesitation to return my forgotten bag. Tom, noticing this, became concerned and went looking for him. But Greg, instead of appreciating their actions, complained that they didn't prioritize him as their superior. And when I offered a small token of thanks, Greg tried to take not only his share but also that of his subordinates who were too polite to accept. That's what it comes down to. All living beings look out for themselves, but as humans, we have the ability to act with reason. The question is whether we can set aside our own interests and care for others. That's the wisdom that allows us to live fulfilling lives. Greg, it's not too late for you to reflect and change your ways. I hope you take this chance to start anew. George's words, filled with the wisdom of age, deeply resonated with me. I hoped that even a little of it would reach Greg's heart as well. He still looked displeased, but he didn't argue and remained silent, listening. Greg, if you truly reflect on your actions and want to start over, I can't promise you your job back, but feel free to come to me for advice, Mr. Smith said, before suddenly turning to me. And Michael, he called my name unexpectedly, making me panic. Yes, sir, I replied, startled. Mr. Smith smiled and said, as of today, you're the new assistant manager. Congratulations. You'll also be receiving a raise. So keep up the good work. And then, looking at Tom, he called his name, Tom. Yes, Tom replied calmly. Support Michael as his right hand. Take care of the junior employees. You're getting a raise too. I trust in your skills and leadership, Mr. Smith said. Even Tom, usually composed, broke into a smile and replied happily, Thank you. I'll do my best. What? Why are they getting promotions and raises? This is ridiculous, Greg shouted. But George, with a calm authority, said, Think carefully about your actions. After a moment of silence, Greg's expression softened into one of regret. I understand. I'll reflect on whether my past behavior was right or wrong, he muttered in a quiet voice. Mr. Smith and George had been strict with Greg, but their approach also held kindness meant to encourage growth. If even a fraction of their words reached Greg, it would be a success. With slumped shoulders, Greg left the office. Watching him leave, I thought to myself, I still have so much to learn as a person. I need to give my all to this new role that Mr. Smith has entrusted to me. A year has passed since that day. I was attending a memorial service with my wife for Mr. George Smith's passing, marking the 49th day since his death. A lot has happened in the past 6 months. I was promoted from assistant manager to manager, gaining Mr. Smith's full recognition and deepening our trust. One day, Mr. Smith's daughter, Emily, came to help out at the company. I was asked by Mr. Smith to teach her some of the administrative tasks. While working together, Emily invited me out to dinner. As we grew closer, word of our relationship reached Mr. Smith, and he said, I trust Michael, so how about my daughter? With Mr. Smith's blessing, Emily and I began dating, and 6 months ago, we happily tied the knot. Unfortunately, George's health worsened, and he passed away last month. I had hoped to see him in better health again, but sadly, that wasn't meant to be. However, while he was in the hospital, he had happily shared the story about how I had run through the airport to return his bag with his visiting relatives. Who would have thought that a chance encounter at the airport would lead to us becoming family? I've learned that regardless of whether you know someone or not, showing kindness without expecting anything in return leads to a richer life. An unexpected person showed up at George's funeral after hearing about his passing. It was Greg. Word had it that after being fired from Smith Foods, he didn't find another job and spiraled into despair. Ultimately, his wife left him and they divorced. Later, he reconsidered his life choices and started working at a small company as a regular employee. Apparently, Greg had reached out to Mr. Smith for advice, and Mr. Smith had introduced him to a company run by one of his acquaintances. Greg said that the words George had spoken to him on the day he was fired had stayed with him. He had been planning to express his gratitude when he heard the news of George's passing. So here he was, paying his respects. George had once said, the ability to put others before yourself, that's the wisdom that leads to a fulfilling life. Greg, reflect on this. It's not too late to turn things around. Even if those words didn't resonate at the time, they eventually sank into one's heart. He had come to realize his mistakes and had fully changed his ways. I can't claim to have the power to change someone, but I hope to live with humility and sincerity, influencing those around me positively. Just like George did. Grandpa always loved and appreciated you, right up until the end. Emily said, her eyes filled with tears as she offered incense. Yeah, I'm truly grateful we met. I replied, smiling gently at her. Standing before the memorial tablet, I clasped my hands together and made a silent vow. I will make your granddaughter, Emily, happy. You're seriously a piece of work, old man. Who the hell would want to have a drink with someone like you, just getting older and more pathetic? Don't you think you're overestimating yourself? It's hilarious, really. Ha ha ha. It was the final day of new employee training. I sat alone at the restaurant where the welcome party was supposed to be held, waiting for my colleagues to arrive. But even as the time passed, no one showed up, and instead, I got mocked over the phone. At 50, I had switched careers and was now going through training with recruits young enough to be my own sons. One of them, Kyle, the son of an executive, was disruptive throughout the training, doing whatever he wanted and constantly causing trouble for the staff. Fed up with his behavior, I couldn't help but call him out, but that only made him target me, and I became the victim of his petty harassment. Everyone around turned a blind eye, and I found myself completely isolated, counting down the days until the training was over. If you really insist, old man, I guess I can show up. But you're footing the whole bill, okay? Do something good for the future generation, will ya? Ha ha ha. Something inside me snapped. If that's how you want to play it, I've got a plan of my own. Laugh while you still can. With a certain resolve burning inside me, I made my way toward the company. My name is Chandler. I'm a middle-aged guy nearing 50, with about 25 years of work experience under my belt. After graduating college, I worked at the same company for a long time. But I finally decided to make a change and was given a small farewell party just last Friday. I'd agonized over the decision, but I knew you only live once, and I summoned all my courage to take on this new challenge. The company I chose for my second start manufactures stationery, specializing in ballpoint pens and mechanical pencils. It's a major player in the industry, practically synonymous with ballpoint pens. Riding the recent stationery boom, the company's pens, praised for their ease of use, have become a staple not just for students but among stationery enthusiasts as well. Thanks to this tailwind, new products are being launched left and right. And factories across the country are working tirelessly to keep up with demand. Today was my first day at this new company, and I was scheduled to take part in training with the other new recruits. I couldn't say I wasn't nervous about being surrounded by people the same age as my own kids. But there was also a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in a long time, making me fidgety all morning. The training took place at headquarters, and I was immediately shown to the conference room. Sure enough, a group of young people in their suits was already seated, and my heart started racing. After a greeting from Mr. Simpson, the company president, followed by an explanation of the company's philosophy and business operations, we split into groups for training. Most people would be assigned to the headquarters, but since it's a manufacturing company, it wasn't uncommon to be sent to one of the various factories. At the factories, employees take the lead in managing production lines, carefully deciding what and how much to produce. It's all about gaining experience and learning on the job. On top of that, you have to manage the schedules of part-time and temp workers. Some part-timers have been with the company for over a decade, so building good relationships with them is crucial. Depending on the process, the number of part-timers increases, leading to cliques forming among them. Of course, people quit all the time, so you have to step in and handle those situations as well. It's a job that requires a lot of attention to detail. I'd heard countless stories of people quitting because they couldn't handle the pressure. Some of the people here might end up going down that same path. I thought to myself as I listened to the employees talk. That said, things have changed a lot since my time, becoming much more advanced. Lost in those thoughts, time flew by quickly. At first, we were all nervous, but gradually, everyone loosened up, and soon they were chatting with me, even treating me kindly despite my age. I was touched. But there was one guy who stood out, Kyle. He was the son of an executive, Trevor. At first, he came across as a hyper, enthusiastic young guy determined to make the training fun. But it didn't take long to notice his problematic behavior. Hey, you. Go get my lunch, will ya? Okay, sure. Today, he'd once again picked on one of the more timid guys and made him fetch his lunch while lighting a cigarette with a smug grin. Hey. You can't smoke in here. An employee tried to stop him, but Kyle just glared at him and said, I've got my future guaranteed. Hearing that, the employee couldn't say anything more, and everyone else just pretended not to notice. This only made Kyle more emboldened, and he continued bossing people around and heckling the staff during the training sessions. It was unbearable. Acting like the elder I was, I decided to warn him. Kyle, from where I'm standing, your attitude isn't exactly commendable. Kyle's eyes widened in anger. Ha? What the hell are you talking about, old man? My name isn't Old Man. It's Chandler. Heh, just like that character from the show, huh? That's hilarious. He was grinning, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. I could feel his simmering anger, the kind that doesn't tolerate defiance. This wasn't going to be easy, I thought, but I don't mind if you joke about my name, but I'd appreciate it if you didn't cause trouble for others or the staff. You're here to work, aren't you? They're not your servants. You should handle your own tasks. In response, Kyle violently kicked a nearby chair. Everyone around turned to look at the commotion. Don't get cocky just because you're the oldest here, old man. Do you even know who I am? My dad's an executive here. If he wants, he could get rid of you just like that. You get that, right? With that, Kyle stormed out of the room, still seething with anger. Everyone glanced at me with concern. I put on a cheerful front for everyone. Sorry for all the fuss. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. But despite my words, their eyes were filled with obvious worry. A sense of unease crept into my heart. As I feared, Kyle began targeting me, and the harassment started. It began with small things, my training materials being torn up, my lunch deliberately knocked to the floor. He would interrupt me every time I spoke during group work, acting like a child. But Kyle was the son of Trevor. Even the staff seemed unable to intervene, and my fellow trainees, afraid of Kyle, not only did nothing to stop the bullying but began to look the other way entirely. Just talking to me could make them Kyle's next target. Sensing this tension, everyone slowly stopped speaking to me altogether. I was frustrated. I had been thrilled to relive the excitement of my early career and to be part of a group again, grateful that I'd made the decision to switch jobs. But then, just because this kid happened to be the son of an executive, he treated me like his personal enemy, mocking and belittling me at every turn. Never in my wildest dreams did I think, at this age, I'd be pushed around by someone like that. The once enjoyable training quickly turned into a dark, miserable experience. Each morning, I would count the days, hunched over as I dragged myself to headquarters. Just a little longer until the training is over. I just have to hold on until then. Isolated and lonely, I endured the training in silence, without exchanging a single word with anyone, until the final day arrived. Hey, old man. We're having a welcome party tomorrow, so book a restaurant right now. And don't screw up and pick a bad place. Just as the training ended and I was about to leave, Kyle appeared out of nowhere, barking orders at me. Wait, a welcome party? That's kind of sudden. Is everyone going? Don't complain when we're giving even someone useless like you something to do at the very least. He cut me off, shoving the responsibility of making a reservation onto me. He didn't care at all about my plans or time, and I was reminded once again of just how self-centered he was. Taking out my phone, I searched for a nearby restaurant. I found one with decent reviews and ratings and called to see if they had a table available. Since it was the day before, I thought they might refuse, but to my surprise, the staff was more than happy to accept the reservation. The person on the phone was friendly, and they offered an all-you-can-drink package with a wide variety of dishes. I was sure Kyle and the others would enjoy it. And yet, I never imagined what would happen next. The day of the welcome party arrived. I showed up on time at the restaurant I had booked. I gave my name and reservation details to the receptionist, and they led me to a large private room in the back. It seemed no one else had arrived yet. I sat down, finally feeling a sense of relief. At last, the training is over. Just a little longer and this miserable experience will be behind me. And so I waited, expecting the colleagues I had shared this journey with to arrive any minute, but half an hour passed, then an hour. And still no one showed up. This isn't right. I tapped on my phone and called Kyle. Hello? What do you want? It's Chandler. No one's shown up, and it's past the start time. What's going on? Kyle laughed loudly on the other end before saying, Old man, you're really something, aren't you? Who would want to drink with an old geezer like you? Don't you think you're overestimating yourself? This is hilarious. Ha ha ha. Then I heard multiple people laughing on the other end of the line. It was clear that a few others had been roped into Kyle's scheme. So, there was never a welcome party in the first place? You lied to me? Yeah, that's right. I felt a little bad for you, so I thought at least I could give you the honor of booking a party that was never going to happen. Seems like a perfect task for someone like you, don't you think? Kyle's prank was so malicious that I could feel my anger boiling over. Oh, but if you're paying for everything, old man, we might just show up. You've got more money than us, right? It shouldn't be a problem for you. Ha ha ha. His words pushed me to my breaking point, but I managed to stay calm enough to respond. I see. Well, this little stunt has shown me exactly what kind of person you are. If that's how you think of me, I have some thoughts of my own. I heard murmurs and whispers from the people around Kyle. Thoughts? What could an old man like you possibly do? Are you out of your mind? Kyle sounded like he was riding high on his arrogance. Kyle continued to bombard me with condescending remarks and attitude. I brushed off his words, calmly thinking through what I needed to do tomorrow. The following morning, a commotion erupted at headquarters. What's going on? Ha? Did something happen? Have you heard anything? No, I haven't. In front of the bulletin board on the first floor, new recruits were buzzing with excitement, and the employees who overheard gathered in confusion. Posted on the bulletin board was a notice titled "Rescinding the Employment Offer for this year's new hires," followed by an explanation of the reasons behind it. What is this? What the hell? Chandler, did you know about this? I didn't respond, just stood there with my arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a curious feeling. Then Kyle burst in, panting heavily. When he saw the bulletin board, a vein in his temple started throbbing. Hey! What the hell is going on? He spotted me and immediately grabbed at me. Why does the HR director's notice have your name on it? Did you pull some strings or something? Half panicking, he glared at me with a twisted smirk. No. I've been hired as the HR director from the start. What? Kyle's face turned even paler. Before coming here, I had spent many years working at a well-known retailer that operated nationwide, moving between various departments. For the last decade or so before I left, I was the HR manager. When I first joined the company, the American casual boom was in full swing, and bright, flashy designs were all the rage. Our company specialized in developing American casual-themed goods and character merchandise, which led to massive sales. However, That all changed when one of the executives was caught in a scandal. As the HR assistant manager at the time, the burden on me became overwhelming. But as an HR professional, I held a firm belief. Not a single employee would lose their job on my watch. A company is only as strong as the hard work of its employees. If that hard work wasn't recognized, the company wouldn't survive. So, along with other middle managers, we worked together to identify the company's shortcomings and brainstormed ways to make changes. Starting with what we could control, we overhauled the company's outdated image, incorporating feedback from younger employees and improving the work environment and benefits as much as possible. Through these small, gradual efforts, we eventually saw a significant drop in both sick leave and employee turnover compared to before the scandal. Motivation started to rise, and little by little, we began to see more smiles from the employees. That kind of positive energy spreads, and soon enough, we had more business partners. One day, an employee suggested we recruit those with artistic talent to create an original company character. This sparked the launch of a character design project, held as a competition. The project was open to anyone interested, regardless of their position. This initiative energized the staff even more, and with all the hard work we had put in over time, sales started to rise steadily. Now, our original character has become incredibly popular, gaining attention from TV shows and magazines, further increasing our company's recognition. Among our product lines, stationery was the top seller, and we partnered with several stationery manufacturers. Naturally, our company was one of their clients, and Mr. Simpson, the president, made a point of visiting regularly, always stopping by to chat casually during those visits. During one of those conversations, Mr. Simpson apparently heard about my accomplishments and, with his eyes gleaming, headhunted me. Although I didn't expect the title HR director to come with the job. When Kyle heard this, he stammered, flustered, "But you took the training with us." HR directors don't go through training. Well, I wanted to observe the new recruits as the HR director, but since I didn't know anything about this company, it seemed like a good opportunity to learn the ropes alongside everyone else. I smiled as I continued. You see, no matter how old you get, it's exciting to try new things. But I didn't expect what happened. I never imagined I'd face such petty harassment from you. And now, I owe an apology to the restaurant for the trouble caused yesterday. Kyle, trembling, opened his mouth as if to say something. But just then, "Hey! Where's Chandler? Where is he?" A short, stocky middle-aged man with a noticeably shiny head stormed in, fuming with anger. It was Kyle's father, Trevor. "I'm Chandler." I stepped forward with a firm expression. The room was filled with a tension unlike anything before. "Hey! What's this about my son's offer being rescinded?" His face was flushed red, and his expression was less that of an executive and more of a father ready to grab me. "Trevor, nice to meet you. I'm Chandler, the newly appointed HR director." "I don't care about that. What's this about my son? He told me you've been harassing him relentlessly and used your position to have his offer rescinded. I won't accept someone like you as HR director." Remaining calm, I pulled something from my pocket and handed it to him. "In that case, I have something for you as well. This is the bill for the cancellation fee from yesterday's restaurant. I'd like you to cover it." Trevor didn't take it. Instead, he swatted it away, shouting, "Are you kidding me? Where's the proof? Show me the proof." "Yes." With that, I pulled out my phone and tapped on a file. What was playing from the phone was the recording of my conversation with Kyle after he and the others bailed on the restaurant the night before. As the recording progressed, the expressions of those around us began to change. When it finished, Kyle muttered under his breath, "What the, you recorded me? Unbelievable, you old man." Yes, and you should be aware of how disgraceful your behavior was, especially as someone aiming for a career in HR. Everyone around wore the same angry expression, brimming with indignation. But I remained completely unfazed. "No, I'd say it's your son's behavior that's truly shameful." "What did you say?" "As you mentioned, I've provided proof. Now, please settle the bill." "You." Just as Kyle shot me a sharp glare, we were interrupted. "Hey! What's going on here? Why all the commotion?" "Mr. Simpson!" Trevor exclaimed, suddenly panicking. "Hey! What are you all doing? Get back to work." At that, the employees who had been standing around like spectators quickly scattered. Now, only the new recruits and a few of us remained, with Mr. Simpson looking at us sternly. "Mr. Simpson, this man Chandler has been spreading false accusations about my son, and I was just trying to clear things up." "Well then, let's hear your rebuttal." Mr. Simpson faced me with a serious expression. Behind him, Trevor and Kyle wore smug smiles, as if they had gained the upper hand. I kept my calm and started. "Yes. Trevor here blackmailed the previous HR manager, threatening to expose his weaknesses unless his son was hired." The room stirred, and the color drained from Kyle's face. Trevor quickly jumped in to defend himself. "Mr. Simpson, that's a lie. He has no proof. That's not all." "Hey! Watch your mouth." "Quiet, Trevor." In a deep, resonant voice, Mr. Simpson sternly rebuked Trevor. Trevor stood there in shock, while Kyle flinched visibly. "But, Mr. Simpson." "Chandler, go on." "Yes." I then calmly and methodically laid out all of Trevor's past misdeeds. For all these reasons, I could no longer stand by and ignore Trevor's behavior as HR director. I then bowed deeply to Mr. Simpson. He let out a sigh and said, "Thank you, Chandler." With those words, Mr. Simpson genuinely showed his appreciation toward me. "Mr. Simpson, you're actually going to believe him? These are baseless accusations. I've heard rumors of your actions for a while now. This just confirms it." Trevor collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Kyle, too, wore a look as if the world had ended. Mr. Simpson approached me and placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. As for Trevor, while he was originally set for immediate dismissal, Mr. Simpson showed great mercy. And Trevor was demoted from executive to a regular employee. His misdeeds became well known within the company, and he was soon relegated to a desk job, shunned by his co-workers. However, Trevor couldn't shake the habits he developed after years of lording over others as an executive. He began secretly targeting weaker employees with borderline harassment. But after one of his victims filed a formal complaint about his abusive behavior, he was fired for misconduct. With no severance pay, he now lives a hard life. As for Kyle, who had already left the company, rumors have it that he was arrested for causing trouble on a train and has since disappeared. What a troublesome pair they turned out to be. As for the new recruits whose offers were rescinded due to this incident, the company concluded that Kyle had led the harassment against me. And the others likely felt powerless to defy him because of his father. The company decided that those who sincerely reflected on their actions and expressed a desire to return would be given another chance. With the chaos finally behind us, I quickly got to work as HR director, proposing the steps we needed to take moving forward. Today, as part of that effort, I'll be visiting each department to listen to the concerns of the employees. My role is to ensure that each individual's voice is heard, fostering an open and supportive workplace. Navigating the corporate world is no easy task. People who grow complacent in their positions and fail to show compassion for those around them will never do good work. Building relationships takes effort, but through those experiences, we become kinder and more understanding. That's what I've learned over my long career. Moving forward, I hope to continue supporting these hardworking people from behind the scenes, doing whatever I can to help. They want to transfer you to a branch in the countryside. Since childhood, I had been working with something I loved and was always at the top of my department. That smooth sailing life came to an abrupt end with a single sentence from someone I deeply respected. Why me? The destination was the lowest performing branch in the company. The sheer unfairness of the situation left me in despair, but what I saw next left me utterly shocked. And so began my new days at this workplace. It would go on to change my life, and the lives of those I met, in a major way. My name is Steve, and I'm 28. Ever since I was a kid, I've always preferred tea over sweet juice. Maybe your taste buds were influenced because you spent so much time with Grandpa, Steve. My mother would often say, encouraging me to drink juice once in a while. She knew my classmates thought it was odd that I only drank tea. But I would stubbornly shake my head. Because it's delicious. I won't drink anything else. Make sure to buy more, okay? All right. The tea I especially liked was a particular bottled brand. I drank it so much that my mom was almost exasperated. I was so obsessed that in 4th grade, I even made it the subject of my summer project. Why does this taste so good? That passion shone through during my job interview, and eventually, I became an employee of the beverage company that sold that very tea. This new product is really great. Please consider it. Your passion is amazing, as always. Please. All right. It's like you're in love with it, said the client, nodding with a smile, though slightly exasperated. There's no moment in this job more rewarding than when my love for the product moves the hearts of those I meet. I was assigned to the sales department. In short, my job is to highlight the quality of our products and get as many clients as possible to purchase them. For someone like me who has a deep love for this company's products, it's the perfect job. Of course, I don't just sell my favorite tea from childhood. The new vegetable juice is doing well, huh? Oh, hey, John. I ran into someone as I returned to the office. Normally, someone like me, a regular employee, would hardly ever cross paths with him. It was John, the head of our division overseeing numerous departments. I tasted it myself, and it does have a rather selective appeal. Actually, I felt the same. But that uniqueness is its charm, and I think people are starting to appreciate that. I see. It's because it's you, Steve. John smiled faintly, and his words warmed my heart. I always test new products myself, visit the planning and development departments, and make sure I fully understand the selling points. To know that someone in his position was aware of that effort. And the results showed in the numbers. For the past year, I had been the top performer in sales. Word has reached headquarters. Keep up the good work. Yes, sir. By the way, Steve, do you like the countryside? Huh? I responded, confused by his sudden question. Well, since my hometown is in the countryside. I guess I do like it. I see. Understood. That's all. Thanks for your time. John was known to be a man of few words, but also famous for his deep sense of compassion. You could tell by the way he spoke, always remembering the names of even the lower level employees like me and offering words of encouragement. He was around the same age as my father, and his quiet demeanor reminded me so much of him that I secretly thought of John as my dad in Tokyo. So, when I felt betrayed by John, it was like being abandoned by a parent. The despair was overwhelming. What? You want me to go to the director's office right now? One day, I was suddenly called in. To my surprise, John himself had summoned me. I was shocked, and my colleagues were buzzing with curiosity. Is it finally happening? Did he beat us to it? But if it's Steve, it makes sense. Well, it's not decided yet. Anyway, I'll go see what's up. I tried to remain calm, but deep down, I couldn't contain my excitement. I was finally getting a promotion, or so I thought. But that hope was quickly shattered. You'll be transferred to another branch, John said, furrowing his brow deeply. At that moment, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. I'm sorry, could you say that again? You're being transferred. This time, he said it more clearly, placing a document in front of me with the large word notice written on it. It read, John, what is this Sunrise branch? I've never heard of it. You said you liked the countryside, didn't you? It's a peaceful town with beautiful scenery. Oh. I suddenly remembered the odd question he had asked me before, do you like the countryside? So, John had been planning to send me out there all along? This is unacceptable. You're transferring me to some unknown branch? Isn't this basically a demotion? I blurted out in a frenzy. I had maintained the top sales performance in the department, and I had just won the President's Award. Many clients trusted me and would even ask for me by name. Most of all, I loved my current job and was confident that no one else was as passionate about it as I was. So why me? But my words didn't reach John. This decision won't be changed. You'll receive the formal notice soon. That can't be. John's voice carried a force that left no room for argument. It subtly hinted that refusing would lead to an even worse fate. I had respected him so much, but was this who he truly was all along? The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut, especially from someone I had considered a second father. But then, in that very moment. What? I thought I was hallucinating from the shock. But no matter how many times I blinked or rubbed my eyes, the scene didn't change, and I finally realized it was real. John, what are you? Please. I beg you. Why? Please, stop this. I forgot all my anger and rushed over to him in panic. He had stood up from his chair and was now bowing his head toward me. There's a reason. I had no choice but to send you to the countryside, John said, still bowing his head, revealing the truth behind my transfer. And then, about a month later, I met her in the town where my new workplace was located. Man, this place is peaceful. I took a deep breath, gazing at the scenery in front of me. Beyond the rice fields, the mountains were already turning shades of red and yellow with the autumn leaves. With nothing obstructing the view, I could take in the stunning landscape in all directions. It felt almost like a luxury. Enjoying the scenery, I kept walking along the gravel road. Finally, a building came into view in the distance. That must be the Sunrise branch. My new workplace. A tiny branch tucked away in the mountains, so obscure that even the head office barely knew about it. But there was something unique about this place. All right. Just as I gathered my resolve and reached for the door handle, it happened. Whoa! The door suddenly swung open on its own, and a thud hit my shoulder. Eek! A short scream escaped from the woman who had bumped into me, and she stumbled. At the same time, her bag fell to the ground, scattering its contents everywhere. Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Panicking, I crouched down, trying to help her pick up the items. But then, I froze at the sight before me. She had bright, long blonde hair, styled with tight curls, shining so vividly it almost hurt my eyes. Thick black eyeliner framed her eyes with long, fluttering lashes, and her makeup was heavy. Her nails were long and glittery, like something out of a magazine. She was the epitome of a gal right in front of me. What was a flashy girl like her doing in the countryside? And she had come out of the building, right? While I stood there dumbfounded, she had already picked up most of her things. Then, she looked straight at me and said, "Move." "Ha! You're in the way." "Move." "In the way?" "At your feet." She pointed sharply at the ground with one of her long nails, her voice cutting through the air. Startled, I quickly stood up and started helping her pick up what was near my feet. And then, wait, this. One of the items caught my eye. It was something I never would have expected from someone like her, something that made me feel a strange sense of connection, almost familiar. By any chance? Give it back." She snatched it from my hand before I could finish. Without even glancing at me, the gal hurried to her car in the parking lot. In no time, she sped off, leaving me standing there, bewildered. What just happened? I think she was beautiful, but there were so many mysteries about her. If that gal turned out to be one of the staff at this branch, my days here were not going to be easy. And as it turns out, my prediction would be spot on. Though, it would come true in ways far beyond anything I could have imagined. Oh, what is this? The moment I stepped into the building, I instinctively covered my mouth and started coughing. After breathing in the fresh air outside, the stale, musty air inside hit me like a shock, and I rushed back out into the neighboring building. "Excuse me, what is going on with that place?" I pointed back at the building I had just come from and asked the people inside. But the women inside didn't even turn to look at me. "Oh, sorry. We're not open yet." One of the women answered lazily, her eyes glued to the TV. I moved around to force my way into her field of vision. "It's not about being open. When was the last time that place was cleaned? It's covered in dust. The floors, the tables, everything." The woman, who wore a name tag that read Martha, sighed and finally responded, though clearly annoyed. "Cleaned? We clean it all the time. You can't be serious. The dust is piled up, it's unbelievable. And who are you, anyway?" "You just barged in here like you own the place," she snapped back. All 5 of the women in the room were middle-aged. And now, with Martha's words, the other 4 turned their eyes toward me as well. Feeling the pressure of their stares, I introduced myself, explaining that I had been transferred from headquarters. "My name is Steve, and I'll be working at this branch in the cafe next door starting today." Yes, the unique feature of this branch was that it was attached to a cafe specializing in Japanese tea. The idea was to let the locals enjoy the company's flagship tea products, which would help boost sales. John had explained this to me before I came here, but honestly, I don't think that place is in any condition to serve food or drinks. The response to my cautious suggestion was far too dismissive, almost indifferent. Looking around, the inside of this branch was far from ideal. The TV blared loudly, the desks were cluttered with snacks and personal items. And there wasn't a single person who seemed to have any motivation. I needed to speak to whoever was in charge, at the very least. With that thought, I turned to Martha. By the way, where's Lily, the branch manager? Lily? The mood inside the building suddenly shifted. Martha's face grew noticeably sour, and she responded with a dismissive tone. She probably left already. Left? I heard a car earlier. She's always like that. What? A thought clicked in my mind. The young woman who bumped into me earlier outside the cafe. Could that have been Lily, the branch manager? She should just quit already. Don't you agree, everyone? Martha muttered. The other 4 women nodded in agreement. What do you mean by that? I asked. We've had it, working under her. I mean, the branch manager has the least motivation of all of us. How are we supposed to care about our jobs? Whenever she does show up, she leaves almost right away. She barely even says hello. Kids these days, I swear. And those clothes. She looks so scary. I totally get it. I wouldn't want to go near her either. The 5 women were now enthusiastically bad-mouthing Lily, their voices growing louder. This was getting out of hand. I clapped my hands together sharply to get their attention. All right. I can see you all have a lot to say, but let's calm down for a moment. Steve, right? You seem pretty eager, but you shouldn't try too hard. Here, we just take it easy, work doesn't really matter, Martha said. Her words perfectly capturing the current state of this branch. This isn't the time for that, I responded firmly. Ha! Martha and the others gave me puzzled looks as I made my announcement. We're having a meeting right now. And this branch will be closed down by the end of this fiscal year. The 5 women erupted in shock at my words. Martha raised her hand, speaking for the group. Hold on, we didn't hear anything about that. That's only if things stay the way they are. It's not a final decision yet. What do you mean? The headquarters has decided that if certain conditions are met, they will reconsider shutting down the branch. It was part of the reason I had been transferred here. But those conditions were nothing short of a monumental challenge for them. The condition is that this branch must achieve the highest sales of all branches by the end of this year. If we fail, the Sunrise branch will be shut down. First place. The 5 women exchanged stunned glances, their mouths agape. I couldn't blame them for reacting that way. This branch had consistently been near the bottom in terms of sales year after year. They knew better than anyone how far behind they were. Everyone started muttering about how impossible it was. Only Martha remained composed and asked the important question. If the branch closes, what happens to us? Unfortunately, everyone will be laid off. Everyone, even you, Steve? Martha's expression suddenly softened into one of concern. Was she really worried about me, someone she had just met? Maybe, deep down, she wasn't such a bad person after all. Yes, I'll be out of a job too. That's why I had come here determined to meet the conditions. I would return to headquarters, no matter what. But to do that, I needed everyone here to get motivated. Martha, you mentioned earlier that you didn't want to work under Lily. Can you tell me more about that? Well, honestly, how can you trust someone who dresses like that? When Lily had arrived as the new branch manager about a year ago, she had shocked everyone. Her entire look screamed flashy gal fashion, something unheard of in a small rural town like this. Not to mention her bleached blonde hair, long, glittering nails. I could tell at a glance. She had no intention of working. The other four women nodded in agreement, and the air started to feel like another round of complaints was about to begin. It's true that Lily wasn't just the branch manager but also the cafe manager. Even I could see how her long nails and elaborate hair weren't suitable for someone in food service. Her appearance would stand out even in Tokyo, let alone in a small rural town like this. I could see why Martha and the others felt the way they did. But is that really okay? Are we really sure she has no intention of working? What do you mean? Maybe we're judging her too much by her appearance. No. She never works, not at all. She has no motivation, Martha quickly responded. I don't think she has zero motivation, I said, revealing something they likely didn't know. I told them about the moment I bumped into Lily outside the cafe. Lily was carrying a book about tea. A book about tea. Martha was the first to speak up, and soon a murmur spread through the group. They whispered in disbelief. Yes. It was a book about how to brew tea properly. Would someone completely unmotivated be carrying something like that? It was such an unexpected hobby for someone with her flashy appearance. And although I hadn't known at the time that she would be my new boss, I felt a sense of connection with her. I realized she might love tea, just like I did. There were signs she had read it thoroughly. I'm sure Lily likes tea. I've always believed that someone who loves tea can't be a bad person at heart. It's something I hold on to deeply. It was at that moment that Martha muttered under her breath. That's my book. Ha! I lent her that book when she first arrived. I told her to study it. I never thought she actually read it. Martha smiled faintly for the first time, saying, I see. The other four women either looked down or wore awkward expressions. Each of them must have had their own thoughts about the situation. All right, let's start by fixing up the environment. Raising my voice to shift the atmosphere, I suggested to the group that we start cleaning the branch and the cafe. This time, no one objected. But Steve, there haven't been any customers at the cafe for months. No matter how much we clean. Martha, leave that part to me. I'll talk to Lily about it. You will? Yes. Since I'd reassured Martha, I now had to make sure to convince Lily. The next morning, I waited outside the cafe for her. What's this? What's going on? Lily stood in the doorway, stunned at the sight of the sparkling clean cafe. And she had every reason to be. We'd spent the entire previous day thoroughly cleaning every nook and cranny. The branch itself had also been fully organized and was shining. It looks great, right? Now we're ready for customers anytime, I said proudly. But Lily's reaction was completely unexpected. Steve, right? What do you think you're doing? What? You did this without my permission. Who said you could clean? I'm sorry, but... seriously, what's your problem? She let out a big sigh and plopped down into a chair. Ignoring my presence, she started watching videos on her phone. Feeling a bit restless, I suddenly had an idea and headed to the kitchen. Here you go, green tea. Please have some if you'd like. As I placed the steaming cup in front of her, she gave me a suspicious look. What is this? The color's off, and it doesn't even smell right. You noticed? I love tea, but I've never been good at brewing it. I guess I just don't have the touch. The purpose of this cafe was to introduce people to the beauty of Japanese tea. And, of course, to get them interested in our company's flagship product, the ultimate fresh brewed Japanese tea series, which I adored. But the tea I had brewed was nowhere near the level of the tea I had loved drinking all these years. Even I could do better than this, Lily muttered after taking a sip. I didn't let that slip by unnoticed. Of course. You've been practicing here every morning, after all. Huh? How do you know that? Lily looked up at me, wide-eyed. The truth is, when I cleaned the kitchen yesterday, I noticed clear signs that someone had recently brewed tea. And curiously enough, the kitchen was the only place that had been kept particularly clean. When I asked Martha and the others, none of them claimed responsibility. That's when I put two and two together and decided to test my theory with Lily. So, you've been practicing how to brew tea, haven't you? Lily's face flushed immediately. And what if I have? What's it to you? It's not like it matters. It does matter. It means you're motivated, deep down. If that's the case, I'm not motivated. Can't you tell? She ran a hand through her long hair with her glittering nails, standing up with a tired expression. Wait. If we keep going like this, the branch will be shut down. The cafe too. So what? Let it close. I don't care. You can't mean that. If you don't care, then why are you carrying that book? At those words, Lily stopped dead in her tracks. What? Martha's book, the one in your bag. If you really didn't care, you wouldn't be carrying it around. It's nothing. It's just been in there this whole time. It's important to you, isn't it? Otherwise, you wouldn't have snatched it back so fiercely. Could you tell me why? She hesitated for a moment, then slowly turned back toward me. Resigned, she finally spoke. I just have bad luck. Bad luck? Nothing ever works out for me. Ever since I was a kid, bad things just kept happening. The more I wanted to hold on to something, the quicker it slipped away. Lily, that's overthinking? Yeah, that's what everyone says. But it's real. She sighed deeply, covering her face with her hands. She explained that when she was still young, her parents suddenly divorced. She adored her father, but he left, and she never saw him again. That's when everything started going wrong in her life. When I first got here, I thought I could give it my best, but of course, it didn't work out. That's not. I mean, I'm the kind of person who gets abandoned by their own father. No one would want to be around someone so worthless. Lily, that's not true. Honestly, maybe I shouldn't have bothered trying from the start. I had only scratched the surface of her story. I couldn't fully understand her pain or what it was like to be in her shoes. But that one thing I could say for certain, that part is definitely wrong. Life isn't fair. Some people have good luck all the time, while others face bad luck over and over. I do believe it's partly due to luck. Exactly, see? You get it, Lily replied with a resigned sigh. But saying it wasn't worth trying, that's not true. Your efforts did reach Martha and the others. What? I had learned from Martha and the others. When Lily first arrived here, she had tried to befriend them, making small talk and reaching out. But they didn't open up to her because of her appearance. As a result, Lily gradually spoke less and lost her motivation for the job, something they had confessed to me while we were cleaning. Almost like a form of repentance. They remembered how hard you tried, Lily. They want to apologize now, even if it's a little late. No way. But the sad part is that you gave up. And because of that, they closed themselves off even more. As the branch manager, you should have stuck with it and really tried to connect with them. I purposely spoke a bit harshly, hoping my words would reach her. The real Lily was hardworking, and I believed, deep down, she had a kind heart. I was sure she'd listen. No matter the situation, you can't give up until the results show. That's what's important, especially when it comes to something you love. Something I love? Deep down, you love tea, don't you? You can tell the quality just by looking at it. Don't you think it's weird? It doesn't suit me. I don't think it's weird at all. But if you're worried about how people see you, why not match your appearance to what you're passionate about? Ha! Lily looked at me, confused, as I explained my plan. The next day, she made a shocking transformation. No way. Is that really you? The 5 staff members of the branch stood wide-eyed, staring at the woman before them. She had her black hair neatly tied back, wore a white shirt and slacks, and her simple makeup highlighted her refined features. This elegant woman, radiating a graceful beauty, responded to Martha's question, her gaze dropping shyly as they all stared at her in awe. It's me, Lily. Unbelievable. The whole branch erupted in excitement. Of course, it was because Lily had undergone such a drastic change overnight. She had removed her long nails, and even her tone of voice was different. There wasn't a single person who wasn't curious about what had happened. What brought this on? All of a sudden, I want to try again. This time, all the way to the end. What? Please. Lily bowed deeply before them. I need your help. I don't want this place to be shut down. Lily, I want to feel like trying was worth it this time. So, I'm going to do my best, and I'm asking for your help. She bowed even deeper, her voice sincere and unguarded. Her words were awkward but sincere, without any pretense. And those straightforward words reached the hearts of Martha and the others, who had been uncertain. Well, saying it is one thing. I know. Sorry, but it's hard to trust that easily, given everything. I understand. So starting today, I'll brew tea every morning. Tea? Please, judge the results of my practice. If my tea starts tasting better, will you work hard with me? Well, Martha and the others exchanged glances and, after a moment, smiled. Of course. But don't expect us to go easy on you. Okay. Lily's face brightened like a flower blooming, the tension finally lifting. And so, Lily and the 5 staff members reconciled. From that day forward, Lily brewed tea for everyone every morning. At first, the tea was criticized, too bitter, poor color, and other complaints. Still, Lily continued brewing tea, and slowly, Martha and the others began to disappear for hours, saying they had to step out for a bit. I wonder what's going on. No one's come back at all today, I said, exchanging puzzled looks with Lily. Yeah. Just then, Martha finally returned. Here, she said, thrusting a stack of papers into Lily's hands. When I saw what they were, I couldn't help but shout. These are all orders? I've been visiting some of my contacts, companies, shops, and so on. I also made sure to promote the cafe while I was at it. Ha! As Lily stood there, stunned, the other staff members returned one by one. Each of them echoed Martha's words as they placed stacks of order forms in front of Lily. You all went out on sales calls? The branch manager's brewing delicious tea for us, so how could we not do our part? Wait, did you just say the tea is delicious now? Tomorrow, I'm planning to visit friends of friends. Right, everyone? Martha's words were met with enthusiastic nods from the other four. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she bowed her head. Thank you so much. Please, let's do this together. Thanks to the strong local connections that only a small town can offer, Martha and the others steadily boosted the sales. I also used my sales experience from the head office to open new retail channels like convenience stores, though I couldn't match their speed. Lily focused on running the cafe, improving her tea brewing skills, and promoting the cafe through social media, which slowly began attracting more visitors. Together, the Sunrise branch moved as one, pushing toward the goal of becoming the top-selling branch. And by the end of January, we achieved an incredible result, second place, just behind the first. This is amazing. This is really happening, right? Lily kept checking the data sent from headquarters, looking to me for confirmation. I nodded, turning toward Martha and the others. But instead of celebrating, they remained calm, with serious expressions. No matter how good the results are, if we're not first, it's meaningless. Isn't that right, Steve? Yes. Martha's words reminded me not to get too comfortable. There was no room for complacency with second place. If we didn't claim first, the branch would still be shut down. We've exhausted all options. There are no new sales channels to open, and our current clients can't increase their orders. We've done everything we can. No way. Then I'll try to bring in more cafe customers. I'll push harder on social media. There's a limit to that too, Lily. Especially with all this snow, it's hard for people to come out just to drink tea. How many would really make the trip? Right. Lily lowered her head, and the mood in the Sunrise branch turned heavy. After everything we'd worked for, I wanted to reach first place just as much as anyone. But it seemed like we'd run out of moves. Was giving up the only option left? Just as I clenched my fist in frustration, something happened. Subscription. Ha! All eyes turned to Lily as she muttered the word. A sub, what? Martha asked, confused. A subscription service, Martha. It's a system where you pay a flat fee and can use the service as much as you want. For example, you can watch unlimited movies. I use it for video streaming. So, what if we offered unlimited tea for a monthly fee? The cost would be lower than paying for each cup individually. A tea subscription, huh? That could definitely catch people's attention. Martha mused, though it was clear that the concept hadn't fully penetrated among the older generation in the area. The cafe's clientele was mostly people of Martha's generation or older. I wondered how many would actually use the subscription service. But Lily's words quickly dispelled my concerns. It doesn't matter if it fails. At this point, we can only hope for the best. Lily, coming from someone who used to be so pessimistic, her words carried a powerful sense of change. I felt my chest tighten with emotion, and her resolve gave me the courage to believe in her and move forward. Let's give it a try. The subscription idea. If it fails, it fails. If both of you say so, I'll start spreading the word around the neighborhood. Right, everyone? The other 4 staff members nodded in agreement to Martha's suggestion. Without wasting a moment, they all rushed out to put the plan into action. They're so reliable. It makes me even more determined to make us the #1 branch, Lily said with a smile, looking every bit the branch manager she'd become. The Sunrise branch had become a precious place for me too. If someone asked me if I still wanted to return to the head office right away, I would have immediately said yes before. But now, it wasn't so easy to answer. Let's become number one, Manager Lily. That's the first time anyone's called me that. Really? Lily laughed, nodding, and I couldn't help but laugh along with her. The moment felt so comfortable, I wished it could last forever. Soon, Lily's tea subscription idea, helped by Martha and the staff's word-of-mouth promotion, caught on. To our surprise, even the senior generation, unfamiliar with the term subscription, found it new and exciting. Despite the heavy snowfall, people from both inside and outside the town started flocking to the cafe. And the Sunrise branch finally achieved the #1 spot in sales among all branches. Not only that, but the branch became widely known across the country for its innovative ideas that significantly boosted sales. The subscription service was such a success that it was approved by headquarters to be implemented at other cafe-attached branches nationwide. Thank you so much, everyone. It's all thanks to you. On the day the final sales results were announced, we decided to celebrate our success at the cafe. Lily, emotional from the start, teared up during her speech, prompting both laughter and sympathetic tears from Martha and the others. You did a great job too, Steve. Anne. I'm sorry for saying all those rude things at first, Lily said, looking at me with sincere eyes. I'd completely forgotten about that. You've just been working me too hard, I joked. Come on. Lily laughed, a bit exasperated by my comment. And then, right at that moment. Well done, Steve. The door, marked private event today, swung open from outside, and a familiar voice filled the room. It was John. You've really done a great job. I wanted to thank you personally. It was John, from headquarters, the one who had arranged my transfer to this branch. Of course, I was surprised by his sudden visit. But the one who was even more shocked was, "Oh, why are you here? You look just like your mother." You've grown so beautiful, Lily. Why are you here, Dad? Lily's face turned pale as her lips trembled. Yes, John was Lily's biological father. And I had known this from the very beginning. You abandoned me. Why now? What do you want? Once we moved into the branch building, Lily's anger erupted. John silently took her words, letting her vent. Her voice was filled with the complex emotions she held toward her father. Do you have any idea what I went through after you divorced, Mom? How many times I was mocked for being from a single-parent family? How much I wished you had cared about me. Even if you didn't take me out or come to school events. I would have been happy if you just came home once in a while. She had been treated harshly by others and couldn't confide in her busy mother. Lily had no choice but to protect herself. That flashy gal style and tough attitude were her armor. It was a way to keep others at bay before they could hurt her. Lily, I'm sorry. Your mother couldn't see things the way you did. She couldn't stand how I was always focused on work, and in the end, divorce was the only option. Liar. You cared more about work than us, didn't you? I don't want to see your face anymore, never. She was about to say that he should never show himself in front of her again. But those words never came out. Because I interrupted her. That's not true, Lily. Steve, it's okay. I don't deserve to be here, John said, trying to defuse the situation. It's time you told her the truth, John. The truth. What do you mean, Steve? Lily, on the verge of tears, turned toward me. I decided to reveal the truth I had learned. It was something John himself had told me when I received my transfer order. Lily, wasn't your job search difficult? Yeah. But how do you know that? But one day, you suddenly got a job offer, didn't you? Yes. That was because of him, your father, John. What? Lily was left speechless as John lowered his head. Still looking down, he began to confess. I heard from your mother that you were struggling to find a job. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. My mother. You've been in contact with her? Yes. John and his ex-wife continued to meet even after the divorce. The purpose was to hand over child support or to hear updates about Lily. During one of those meetings, he learned about Lily's job troubles. And Lily's mother had asked John to help their daughter. So, I did everything I could to get you a job at my company. It's a big, reputable firm, and I thought your mother would feel reassured. I went around begging people for help, but it wasn't easy. In the end, all I could do was secure a spot at this rural branch. But that's when John's name finally carried some weight. Someone, trying to please John, pulled strings. And Lily was suddenly promoted to branch manager, despite being a new graduate. Of course, not everyone was happy about it. There were people who wanted to see you in this branch fail due to its poor performance. That's why I sent Steve here. What? Lily stared at me in shock. I nodded, confirming John's words. At first, I thought it was an unfair demotion too. But I soon realized it was to protect you, Lily. No, this can't be. Steve is the one who could save this branch, the one who could protect you, Lily. I made a big request to get him here. Steve, I'll never be able to repay you. I'll owe you for life. Truly, thank you, John said, bowing deeply to me, just like that day. He even promised to put me in any position I desired, staking his career on it. And, of course, offering to return me to headquarters immediately. But my answer had already been decided. What I want is time with Lily. What? Steve? John and Lily both stood there, stunned. I continued. John, Lily. What I want is for Lily to spend time with her family. That's my wish. But what do you gain from this? John asked, bewildered. I didn't answer him, instead locking eyes with Lily. Lily, you may have thought your father abandoned you. But he's been thinking about you all along. Yeah. Don't say you never want to see him again. He's been longing to see you. So now, show him your face, make up for lost time. Okay. As tears streamed down Lily's face, John wiped his own tears. The two of them soon embraced tightly, both crying. You've grown so much, Lily. Dad. Quietly, I stepped away, not wanting to interrupt the long-awaited reunion between father and daughter. After a while, Lily, with red, swollen eyes from crying, came running after me outside. Steve. I think I had given up on my life. I kept telling myself that nothing good was going to happen. That's why I started dressing more flashily, as if that would help me escape. But now, I'm so glad I didn't give up. I'm so grateful you told me not to quit until I saw results. Meeting you taught me something so important. From now on, I want to keep working hard. No matter what happens, I want to keep going, by your side. Is that okay, Dad? What? Behind her, John stood with a complicated expression, shaking his head as if resigned to the situation. Already leaving your old man, huh? It's a little sad, to be honest. Dad, you'll always be my father. But Steve is special. Well, if it's Steve, then I'm all for it. I looked back and forth between the two of them, struggling to keep up with the conversation. Lily smiled shyly and then spoke more clearly, leaving no room for doubt. I love you, and I want to be with you. What? Unless you don't feel the same? No. I'm happy. At my nervous but sincere reply, Lily's face lit up with a radiant smile. In time, I was reinstated at headquarters. And there was one other person who received a promotion alongside me. Lily, recognized for her achievements, was assigned to the planning department at headquarters as well. Don't worry about us. Even without you two, we'll manage just fine, Martha said, proudly standing tall as the new branch manager, taking over Lily's role. The other 4 staff members, teary-eyed but smiling, waved us off. They had all become precious friends. Even though we'd be working in different places, we'd always stay connected. Just know, if you make her cry, I'll come to headquarters and give you a good talking to. Martha whispered playfully in my ear, giving me a firm pat on the shoulder. So, she had figured it out all along. I chuckled, nodding to her in agreement. Of course. I'll make sure to keep her happy. What are you talking about? Lily looked at me curiously, but I brushed it off with a casual, "Oh, nothing." Someday, I promised myself, I would tell her the whole story. With that thought, I stepped forward into the new chapter of my life, excitement filling my heart. And most importantly, I was walking forward with someone I cherished by my side. I wonder if there are others out there who have completely given up on their lives, thinking it's all hopeless. To those people, I want to ask, have you really done everything you can before giving up? The woman I know had almost given up before even trying, convinced things would never work out. Had she given up back then, she would surely be filled with regret now. But because she chose to keep going, she's now thriving, shining brightly in all she does. Watching her, I've been inspired, and she's given me the courage to keep challenging myself. She once told me I taught her something important, but now I feel like she's the one teaching me. That's how I feel these days.